Hi there, night traveler. As your phone comes to rest beside you, your shoulders loosen and your breath finds an easy tide. You're safe here. For the next 2 hours, we'll drift through space mysteries the way moonlight drifts across a quiet room, slow, tender, and unafraid of the dark. Science will be our lantern, warm in the hand. Wonder will be our map. We'll linger with the questions that hum beneath the stars, where the first light came from, how galaxies learned their graceful spins, why the universe feels both endless and intimately close. Nothing to solve tonight, only stories to follow, threads of starlight weaving gently through thought and sleep. If a fact catches your curiosity, let it glow and fade like a firefly. If a thought grows heavy, let it float away on the next breath. If this gentle voyage helps you rest, a light tap on like and subscribe helps other sleepy minds find their way here too, one quiet soul at a time. For now, feel the room grow softer, the world outside dim like a curtain lowering. Let your inhale widen, your exhale lengthen. The cosmos is unhurried, and so are we. When you're ready, we begin. Rest your gaze on the dark between the stars, the part the eyes skip past at first, and let it widen. In that darkness, nothing is ever truly still. Even when a room falls silent, air molecules slip by one another, and the body hums its private music. The vacuum of space is like that, only stranger. A seeming emptiness that trembles with possibility. A sea of tiny ripples no instrument can scoop up directly, yet whose fingerprints appear everywhere once you learn where to look. Call them quantum fluctuations if you like. The name is crisp, the reality is softer, like the shimmer that dances on hot roads at noon. They are not particles in the usual sense, more like brief borrowings from the cosmic ledger, a blink of existence that vanishes before it can be caught, leaving the world subtly rearranged. Imagine two flawless mirrors, placed face to face in a true vacuum, separated by a whisper of distance. Nothing stands between them, yet a delicate pressure presses them together, as though invisible moth wings were beating in the gap. Decades ago, a quiet calculation predicted this gentle pull. If the vacuum truly seethes with momentary flickers, then the space between the mirrors allows fewer of those flickers than the space outside. Fewer ripples inside means lower pressure. Higher pressure outside means a nudge inward. In time, the nudge was measured in patient laboratories, not by wrestling plates together with brute force, but by listening for micromotions, by letting a hair-thin wire twist and relax until the signal emerged like a note in a lullaby. The effect is small, but it is a door you can touch with your mind. Place your attention there, on the thin nothing, feel the slight, persistent persuasion. A vacuum that is not empty has started to show its face. Now let the scene change without you moving. A single hydrogen atom floats in a chamber of near perfect stillness. It is the simplest song in physics. One proton, one electron, something like a duet. Yet even this clean line wavers. The electron's energy levels, those tidy steps inside the atom, do not sit exactly where the old equations insisted they should. They shift by a hair's breadth, tiny, but real, because the electron is never alone. That same restless vacuum rattles it, bathing it in ghostly light that isn't quite there. It is as if the stage beneath the electron has a pulse, and the dance adjusts to keep time. The world learned this from careful experiments that heard the slight detuning, and from a theory with with the patience to account for it. No drama, no thunder. Just a minute correction. A sign that the invisible background hum is an active partner, even in an atom's most intimate arrangement. Breathe in, breathe out. The smallness of that shift does not make it fragile. It makes it precise, like a watchmaker adjusting a gear by the width of a sigh. Lift your eyes again, slowly, to a much larger canvas. In every direction, a faint glow washes through the sky, older than any star you see, an afterglow from when the universe was very young and hot and busy. Held in that glow are tiny variations in warmth and density, patterns like the grain in wood, so slight you would miss them if you blinked too hard. Those patterns are thought to be the old, primordial ripples of the quantum sea, stretched gigantic by a sudden early swelling, like notes pulled into a long, haunting chord. Left to play out for billions of years, those microscopic seeds became the scaffolding for galaxies and clusters, the filaments that now lace the cosmos. In the quiet of night, you can almost feel it, the way a quiver can grow into architecture. A whisper can become a wall of stars. That ancient glow is not bright to our eyes, but it is steady, and the map of its freckles reads like the earliest diary entry the universe left for us. When you imagine that map, let your breath slow to match it broad, even unhurried, like tracing a finger along a coastline you already know by heart. On another front, beneath mountains and in rings of magnets, protons fly in circles at a fraction below light speed and kiss with a force the human body cannot sense. From those collisions spill showers of particles, some expected, some rare, all nested in probabilities like shells. Even here, the jitter of the vacuum matters. Virtual particles flare and fade in the math, and in the detector's background hiss. The fields that underwrite matter, fields we name and measure, respond to the vacuum's restlessness, as surely as a violin's body responds to the air inside it. You don't need to memorize the catalog of particles to feel this. It is enough to understand that the void is the canvas and the paint at once. Without its flicker, the strokes would land differently, or not at all. The laboratory is a listening room for that flicker. Long after the machinery powers down for the night, the idea keeps humming the way a song lingers in the ribs. All of this, the mirrors that feel a pressure no wind delivers, the atom whose steps are retuned by an unseen orchestra, the infant sky that kept the memory of quantum ripples adds up to a picture that is outwardly calm and inwardly busy. It invites a deeper question you can sit with like a warm mug. If emptiness is not empty, what does that say about beginnings? Let the mind wander there without hurry. There is an old and audacious idea that the total energy of the universe might sum to nothing at all, like a ledger that balances perfectly once every line is accounted for. The energy we can hold and weigh the mass of matter, the blaze of radiation, the kinetic swirl of particles is positive. The energy bound up in gravity's pull, the way attraction stores itself as a kind of debt we call negative potential energy, leans the other way. Put both on the scale, and there is a possibility that the needle hovers exactly over zero. It sounds slippery, but you have felt the flavor of it. Perhaps carrying a heavy box down a staircase, you gain a little speed. Gravity lends a hand. That lending has a sign, and it is the sign of a hill inviting you down. In the math of the cosmos, that invitation counts as negative. The deeper the gravitational well, the closer stars and galaxies draw, the more negative the ledger on that side becomes. Meanwhile, the bright things burn, and mass holds its stored sunlight, and radiation flows. Those are the positive entries. If the universe is vast enough and structured just so, the invitation and the brightness could cancel exactly the way a tide's push and pull leave the sea level steady when taken together. In such a picture, the universe is allowed a daring trick. The springing forth of structure and heat and stars from an initial state that borrows energy and repays it simultaneously with gravity's negative bookkeeping. The bill never comes due because it is balanced as it is written. Hold that thought lightly, like a feather on the palm. A vacuum that churns with temporary borrowings is not a firm floor, but a foam, and foam does odd things when stretched. Early in cosmic time, the stretching swift and enormous could take the tiny loans and scale them up, promoting fluctuations into the seeds of everything that would later condense. The arrangement is not magic, it is delicate accounting. What you gain in one column, you lose in another. The universe does not violate its own rules, it dances within them, arranging steps so that the grand pattern makes sense. To consider that all the matter and radiation around you, the ink of galaxies, the light in your room might be paired against gravity's negative stash, creating a net sum of zero, is to consider a kind of cosmic poise. Not emptiness masquerading as fullness, but fullness revealing a symmetry you could miss if you looked only at one side. This doesn't turn the mystery off like a lamp. It softens it into a view you can rest in. Energy is not a single note. It is a chord, and gravity's note is inverted. When two notes like that are played together just so, they can cancel or harmonize in ways your ear recognizes without naming. Think of it as a balance beam, not an erasure. All the events you know, stars igniting, atoms binding, thoughts forming, still occur. The balance is not the absence of story. It is the frame that keeps the story from tipping off the page. Breathe in. Imagine the ledger lines stretching beyond any horizon. Breathe out. Feel the quiet pleasure of numbers that don't explode, but resolve. There are edges to this thought, of course. Physicists argue gently and sometimes not so gently about how to define energy for the whole universe, because gravity is a subtle partner and space-time bends the stage beneath our feet. On the largest scales, energy is not a simple coin to count. It changes form and flows across geometry itself. Yet even with those subtleties, the picture of a near-zero total persists as an alluring guide, urging us to see the world not as a pile of separate things, but as a network of relations where pushes and pulls make a whole. In the language of sleep, it is the sensation that the body and the mattress give way to each other, leaving your weight suspended in comfort. You are not falling, you are held. Slide back, for a moment, to the smallest theater again. The vacuum's flicker tells you that nature does not sit on her hands between events. The Casimir nudge, the atom's retuned note, the relic patterns in the sky, the hiss beneath particle collisions. These are like the footprints you find in snow at dawn, proof of a nocturnal life you didn't witness. They do not insist on themselves. They are there for whoever looks softly enough. In that softness, the most radical thought becomes gentle. A universe that could rise as a fluctuation, that could balance its bright accounts with gravity's dark ink, that could be, in the strictest arithmetic, a grand sum of nothing, and yet feel, to anyone awake within it, like everything. That is not a paradox to solve before sleep. It is a lullaby to keep nearby, the kind that doesn't close with an answer, only a feeling that order and surprise can share a bed. If you like, Let your breath join the rhythm of these ideas, those that hold still and those that quiver. Inhale, counting quietly to 3, as if drawing in the night through a half-open window. Exhale to 4, a small surrender. The mind might offer pictures on its own, two close mirrors, their emptiness thick with invisible waves. A pale atom, humming in tune with a background no ear can hear. A sky, stamped with freckles, older than any memory. A ring of magnets, circling a mountain, where particles write their bright cursive and disappear. Between each picture, leave a little room. In that room, the zero on the cosmic ledger begins to feel less like nothing and more like balance. The quiet balance a tightrope walker trusts. There is kindness in this view. If the universe can keep its accounts so elegantly, adding here, subtracting there, and never losing track, it suggests a kind of coherence you can lean into. It does not tell you why you are here or what you are for. It says, the rules that cradle stars also cradle you. The same patient arithmetic that tuned an electron's steps also permits your lungs to fill and empty, your thoughts to flicker and fade. That is enough for tonight. Let grand questions be lanterns that light the path without hurrying your feet. Now the room grows even softer. The edges of furniture blur. Somewhere far away, galaxies continue their slow conversations across dark filaments. Nearer, a watch ticks. The quantum sea keeps its restless counsel whether you listen or sleep. The cosmic ledger keeps its balance. Your heartbeat writes a quiet line across the dark, steady and sure. Inhale as if drawing the tide. Exhale as if letting it go. If a thought arrives, smile at it the way you would at a neighbor on an evening street. Then let it pass. In the calm that follows, the vacuum is not empty, the universe is not heavy, and you are not required to hold up either. Let the breath look after you. Let the darkness be full of gentle things. Let the numbers fold into silence. Nothing is lost. Everything rests. Picture a rule so simple it could be whispered in a child's ear. Nothing is truly lost, only changed. Physicists call it conservation of energy, but the heart of it is gentler than its name. Heat becomes motion, motion becomes light, light sinks into warmth again. A closed box keeps its tally, no matter what acrobatics happen inside. The numbers shuffle costumes, yet the sum holds steady. Let that promise sit beside you like a steady companion. Feel your own body honoring it. Food and sunlight becoming heartbeat, heartbeat becoming warmth, warmth dissolving into the air as a faint shimmer you cannot see. The universe keeps books in this way, not with ink, but with transformations. When minds first trusted this rule, they imagined simple arenas, tabletops and laboratories, places where boundaries are firm and time ticks evenly. Then the arena widened. Space itself turned out to be supple, more like fabric than stage, curving around mass and energy, swelling on vast scales. In such a setting, the question, where did that energy go, stops pointing to a neat shelf and begins to point toward geometry. A photon that leaves a distant galaxy arrives redder, its wavelength stretched by the growth of space, its energy lower. No thief has stolen it. The journey itself changed the music. In the language of general relativity, energy is not a single treasure chest to be inventoried once for all. It is a chorus carried by a changing hall. Locally inside your box, inside a star conservation, sings clearly. Globally, across an expanding cosmos, the song threads through the architecture, and the architecture sings back. This is where a daring idea slips through the door like a night breeze. The whole ledger might balance to zero. On one side, the brilliant entry is matter, with its stored mass energy, radiation with its lively waves, motion with its kinetic surplus. On the other, a quieter column, written in negative signs, gravity's pull, a kind of energetic debt that deepens as things fall together. If you've coasted down a hill on a bicycle and felt speed bloom without pushing, you've borrowed from gravity's account. In the universe's accounting, that borrowing has a negative sign. As structures form, galaxies condensing from a thin mist, clusters gathering along invisible rivers, the gravitational column grows more negative. Put all the brightness and all the borrowing onto a single balance, and the needle might rest exactly in the middle. Not emptiness masquerading as plenty, but plenty paired so perfectly with its counterweight that the grand total is poised at nothing. This possibility doesn't scold the rule of conservation. It dresses it for a larger stage. A closed universe can still keep faith with the promise that nothing is lost. It simply keeps that faith in a way that includes curved space, stretching distances, and the peculiar bookkeeping of gravity. The fact that light redshifts as space expands, seeming to lose energy, is not a betrayal, but a reminder that the stage itself participates. The energy you thought was a simple coin resides partly in the shape of the room. When the room swells, the coin's value reads differently, yet the whole establishment remains in balance. Follow that thought into the places where energy changes costume most dramatically. Deep in a star's core, heat and pressure urge light nuclei to merge. Mass gives up a sliver of itself and blooms as light. The law is not offended. It nods, because E equals MC. 2 was the invitation all along. That light climbs through the star's interior and spills into space, bathing worlds that orbit far away, including this one. On a different frontier, near black holes, energy keeps its braided form even as gravity tightens the weave. Matter spirals inward, heats, and radiates fiercely. Some is lost past the horizon. Some is flung outward as jets that spear the intergalactic dark. The ledger never stops moving, but the balance holds steady in each local trade, as if the universe were playing a melody so familiar that even its wildest improvisations stay in key. Now let the mind scale down until it floats among flickers too brief to catch. Virtual particles appear and vanish in the vacuum, not as little beads you could pluck from the air, but as ripples permitted by uncertainty, borrowed energy that must be repaid quickly enough that no debt collector can pin it down. The vacuum is busy, but its busyness is lawful. The borrowing is exact, the repayment swift. It's akin to the way a wave lifts a boat and sets it back in place once the swell has passed. For a moment, something was granted, then the sea resumed its level. These flickers are not disobedience. They are the microscopic pulse of conservation itself, beating in time with quantum rules. Stretch that pulse across the widest canvas and the imagination meets a hush. If a small borrowing can blossom without breaking the book, what about a large one balanced just so? The suggestion is quiet and audacious at once. A universe could arise from a fluctuation if the positive entries matter, radiation, or motion were met exactly by gravity's negative ink. In such a telling, nothing is not sterile. It is a quantum sea whose level never changes even as waves briefly stand and spread. An early, rapid swelling of space could take those baby ripples and draw them out, easing them into seeds from which galaxies would condense. The rule is not suspended for this to happen. It is honored at a grander scale, as if conservation were not a fence to keep creation out, but the choreography that makes creation possible without imbalance. Of course, a claim this sweeping must walk with care. Physicists tread its edges with slow steps because energy, on the scale of the whole universe, is difficult to define cleanly. Gravity binds energy to geometry. Space-time curves and shifts. The tools we use to count inside a box don't fit the sky neatly, but sometimes a picture that is hard to count is still easy to feel. Imagine a tightrope stretched over a quiet lake. A dancer moves, and every lean is matched. Every lift of the arms has a counter motion. The rope quivers, the reflection quivers, and yet the dancer never falls. A zero-energy universe feels like that, a poise maintained through constant, reciprocal motions. How might we test such a feeling against the world? Patiently, and with many kinds of light. Some of the energy budget is visible in the straightforward sense. Stars glow, gas shines, dust warms. Astronomers weigh these luminous things by their shine and by how they tug on their neighbors. Then there are the shadows that reveal mass by what they distort. Galaxies spin faster at their edges than the visible matter can explain. Invisible mass, dark matter must be there, anchoring them with gravity's firm hand. Farther out, starlight from distant galaxies bends around clusters and arcs and rings, the way a river bends around a pebble. The bending tells us how much mass sits there, seen and unseen. And over everything lies a subtle pressure that accelerates expansion. Dark energy recognized not by its glow, but by the way distant supernovae arrive dimmer than they would in a simple, coasting cosmos, and by the hushed pattern of ripples frozen in the afterglow of the early universe. Piece by piece, the cosmic ledger reveals its categories. Ordinary matter you can hold in a thought. Dark matter perceived by its pull. Dark energy inferred by the pace at which distances grow. To connect these measures to the shape of space, physicists lean on equations that tie curvature to content, geometry to energy. They are not incantations but clear relations, pointing out that to bend a room, you must fill it a certain way, and to fill it a certain way is to bend it in response. When the sums are written with this in mind, the zero-energy picture becomes less of a slogan and more of a frame. Positive contributions from matter and radiation can, in principle, be offset by negative gravitational potential energy, especially in a universe whose global geometry and boundary conditions allow such balance. The phrase, "in principle," matters. It keeps the door open without pretending the furniture is already arranged. Critique has its place in this quiet room, and it comes with gentleness rather than heat. Some caution that gravitational energy is not a simple thing to inventory, particularly in a universe that is not only curved but changing its scale with time. Others remind us that dark matter and dark energy remain partially veiled. We infer their presence and properties, but do not hold their essence in our hands. If the ingredients are not fully grasped, can we trust the exactness of a cancellation between them? And what of infinity? If the universe is boundless in extent, what does it mean to tally its energy without a boundary to close the books? These are not wrecking balls. They are honest questions laid like stones along a path, asking us to step with awareness. Even with these stones in view, the draw of the idea remains. It harmonizes with the quantum permission slip we met in the vacuum, the rule that allows brief borrowings as long as balance is kept. It hints at a deep conversation between the smallest trembling and the largest structure, and it blends naturally with a perspective that has been growing in modern thought, that information might be as fundamental as matter and energy, the way a recipe is to a cake. Imagine a volume of space described fully by a pattern inscribed on its boundary, as if a room could be known perfectly by what is written on its walls. The holographic principle speaks in that key. If the world can be drawn on a skin like that, then the counting of energetic degrees of freedom, what can happen, how it can happen, echoes through surfaces rather than volumes. Balance takes on a new texture. The universe is not a horde of disparate things, but a woven set of relations that can be summarized compactly at the edges. Inhale softly. Think of an ocean at night. The tide lifts a little and falls a little, but the sea remains. Energy moves like that through you, through stars, through empty space, rising here as light, settling there as gravity's hold. The pull you feel walking down a slope is kin to the pull that keeps galaxies spinning together. The glow of your lamp and the glow of a distant nebula owe their brightness to the same rule that lets mass and motion trade places without debt. If the whole, a truly closed whole, adds to zero, it is not an erasure of wonder. It is a signature that the universe writes with both hands at once. Still, the mind that loves story may ask how a sum of nothing can feel so much like everything. Maybe the answer is that nothing, in physics, is richer than the word suggests. A quantum vacuum is full of fields at their lowest hum, not blank in the way a vacant room is blank. Place two plates close together and the hum changes. Place an electron in an atom and the hum shifts its steps. Let space balloon early on and the hum's wrinkles become the scaffolding of the cosmic web. A universe that can arise in such a sea is not conjured from emptiness. It is gathered from possibility, carefully balanced by gravity's negative ink so that no rule is bent. The conservation law is not a gate slammed shut. It is a rhythm that makes the dance possible. You can drift inside that rhythm. The complexities that trouble the day definitions of global energy, debates about dark ingredients, the geometry that swells and curves can be left on a shelf, not ignored, just resting lightly. What is left is the feeling of balance, of exchange without loss, of a cosmos that keeps its promises even as it astonishes. The photon that reddens across 1 billion years does not mourn what it has given up. Its story simply stretches to fit the room. The star that spins its mass into light is not poorer for it. It is the act itself that defines its life. The space between galaxies that grows wider is not an absence. It is a breath the universe takes, slow and profound. If you listen closely, your own breath has already matched that pace. Inhale, a quiet gathering. Exhale, an unhurried letting go. Somewhere, a supernova's last light slides through expanding space and softens by the time it glances off a telescope's mirror. Somewhere else, a galaxy cluster's gravity bends a stream of starlight into a faint ring. Closer than that, deep in the quiet fabric of what looks like nothing, virtual quivers rise and fall, keeping faith with rules that have never failed us. All of it participates in an unbroken conversation between form and emptiness, between positive and negative, between what is given and what is held in reserve. Let the thought of a zero-energy universe be a lantern with a shaded hood, enough glow to walk by, not so much that it keeps you awake. If the ledger truly sums to nothing, you are not living amid a deficit. You are floating in a balance so complete that even a night breeze could not tip it. And if later work shows that the sum is near zero rather than exact, or that the counting must be done differently, the kindness of the idea will remain. In every exchange, nature remembers itself. The numbers do not fly apart. Soften the jaw, let the shoulders drop like leaves. The universe continues to transform mass into light, light into warmth, warmth into sky, without spending more than it can repay. The rule that guards these trades is older than stars and intimate as breath. It is safe to rest inside it. The air slides in, the air slides out. The mind loosens its grip on labels. Somewhere, a photon lengthens and a galaxy drifts. Somewhere, a particle flickers and vanishes. Somewhere, a ledger balances perfectly or close enough to hum. Let the harmony carry you. Let the balance hold. Let your thoughts loosen like threads at the edge of a woven shawl. Patterns begin to drift forward, the kind you find on frostlit windows, on shells, in the way branches divide, in the way galaxies spiral. They are quiet, insistent arrangements, and they hint at something shy but deep. The world keeps time with mathematics, not just with numbers scratched in a notebook, but with relations that feel as inevitable as breath. A stone falls and a planet turns, light bends and an atom hums. Each motion seems to follow a score that existed before any player touched the instrument. Some minds have dared to phrase the thought more boldly. Perhaps the score is not merely a description. Perhaps the score is the thing. A universe as mathematics, not written in chalk or glowing on a screen, but present as structure itself, as if reality were a vast, lucid equation, being itself everywhere, all at once. Breathe in, as if drawing a clean line across a page. Breathe out, as if letting that line curve into a circle, then a spiral. For a long time, mathematics was our language for the sky's behavior, a set of symbols that made sense of comets and tides and orbits. Yet the story kept surprising us with how far those symbols could reach. Equations whispered in the quiet and then showed up in nature's handwriting, far away, with uncanny fidelity. The arcs of planets obeyed the same geometry that sketched the path of a tossed pebble, just stretched to a scale you can only visit in your mind. The geometry of space-time, the soft bend that gravity makes, was foretold before we could see starlight curve around the Sunday. The wave equation that sings for electrons predicted spectral lines and interference patterns that laboratories later found, patiently, exactly where the notes said they would be. It is difficult to call such accuracy a coincidence. It feels more like recognition, the way a melody feels right when you hear it again after many years. We discover more than we invent. We uncover arrangements that were already there, the way ocean tide reveals stones that night had covered. If that sense is true, the warmth in your room and the glow of a nebula are not just things that happen to fit equations. They are lawful expressions of deeper relations, patterns in the bones of the world. Symmetry becomes a form of grammar. When a system looks the same after you rotate it or slide it or exchange parts, the universe pays you back with a conservation law. Something remains the same through the motion. Momentum, charge, energy. These are not random treasures, but the patient gifts of symmetry. The Standard Model, our most successful catalog of matter's ingredients, is built like a dance around these symmetries. Group theory, the mathematics of transformations, serves as the choreographer. Particles appear as steps that can be combined, permuted, and constrained, each move permitted or forbidden by the underlying pattern. This is not cold machinery. It is elegance that happens to be true. You can feel the calm of it if you let the technical name soften into the idea that the universe respects its own hidden harmonies. If reality is patterned to this degree, daring imaginations take a further step. Any coherent mathematical structure might count as a reality, whether or not we inhabit it. Geometry alone hints at many kinds of space where life could unfold, each with its own moods and rules. The flatness you intuit when you lay a ruler on a table belongs to Euclid. Triangles there add to a tidy 180 degrees. But a space that saddles like a mountain pass the domain of hyperbolic geometry lets triangles open wider, angles summing to less than 180, lines diverging in a hurry. Motion, heat, and gravity would carry different flavors there. An elliptic space, gently curved like a sphere, tightens triangles until their angles exceed 180. Walk straight long enough and you arrive where you started, without turning. Each geometry invites a different physics, not as whimsy, but as the necessary follow-through of the space's own properties. Think of it like choosing an instrument. A violin and a drum cannot help but make different music from the same gesture. There are stranger instruments still. Picture existence not as a smooth fabric, but as a vast, discrete network points linked by connections, a graph whose nodes carry states and whose edges represent interactions. Distances become counts of steps along the web. Motion is a sequence of hops. Causality is a path through connectedness. On such a canvas, the smallest intervals are not indefinitely divisible. Space and time come in quanta, like pearls on a string. Or imagine that algebra itself rules about how elements combine takes the reins. Groups, rings, and fields dictate what symmetries are possible and what kinds of conservation must hold. Choose a different algebraic skeleton, and the allowed particles and forces reassemble themselves accordingly. And then topology arrives, gently radical, reminding us that shape without measurement still matters. If space loops on itself like a torus, there are routes that return without backtracking, fields that thread the whole, patterns that cannot unwind. A universe with such connectivity would carry signatures in its microwave afterglow, and in the way waves wrap around it, like a bell whose overtones tell you its shape in the dark. All of these are not just games of the mind. They suggest that what we call laws of physics might simply be the local dialect of the mathematical structure we occupy. Change the structure, and you change the grammar. Somewhere in the high abstraction where mathematicians play, there may exist clean, self-consistent structures with no place for our kind of matter, or with new forms of matter we cannot picture. The thought can be as comforting as it is dizzying. It says that our universe is coherent because it is a valid piece of mathematics, and that coherence is the reason breath can follow breath without surprise. Let the horizon widen further, as if your mind were standing on a beach at night and the sea kept revealing new inlets. The equations that govern our world, beautiful but not tyrannical, often admit more than one solution. Solve them with one set of initial conditions, and you get a universe like ours. Solve them with another, and you get a cousin that cooled differently, curved differently, unfolded with different rhythms. In the language of relativity, space-time can take on many shapes. Some expand forever, some recollapse, some ripple, each is a valid geometry married to an energy content that suits it. Quantum theory goes further, suggesting that when a system can evolve in multiple compatible ways, reality does not choose one and smother the others. It lets every possibility continue, each in its own non-communicating strand. The wave that describes what might happen does not die when you pick one outcome. It fans out into branches that carry every outcome forward, silently, side by side. On still another front, the early universe may have grown in a way that refuses to end completely. Even now, eternal inflation, the slow fade of a rapid swell. In that picture, some regions stop inflating and settle into bubble worlds like ours, each bubble with its own local details. Other regions keep stretching, spawning more bubbles without meeting them again. The conditions that set the knobs of physics, masses, couplings, constants, may be written anew in each bubble by the way symmetries break as expansion calms. The result is not a single story, but a froth of stories, never touching, all legitimate, each one a theater for its own play of stars and atoms. And in the high mathematics of string theory, where tiny vibrating loops stand in for point-like particles, the equations allow an extravagant landscape of possible vacuum states, each a valley with distinct laws. Climb out of one valley and down into another, and the spectrum of fields and forces rearranges like a kaleidoscope. It is tempting to organize these glimpses into a simple ladder, 4 rungs high. On the first, the universe extends beyond what we can see. Our region is a patch in a much larger quilt, stitched with the same rules, but different patterns of matter. On the second, the inflationary quilt contains patches so distinct that the rules themselves vary, set by the particulars of symmetry breaking, a gallery of differently tuned worlds. On the third, reality branches whenever quantum possibility divides. The gallery multiplies even without new regions of space, as every outcome is realized in parallel. On the fourth rung, audacity completes the circle. Every consistent mathematical structure gets to exist as a universe in its own right. You don't have to hold these levels as a creed. You can simply notice how naturally they grow from the behavior of equations we trust in the laboratory and from the fertility of mathematics itself. Between these rungs, an old philosophical question hums like a quiet string. Are mathematical objects discovered or invented? When a theorem is proved, have we found a cliff that was always there, or have we built a tower with human hands? The universe's behavior leans toward discovery. Predictions written decades before measurement turn up in telescopes and detectors as if the world were nodding back to the page. If there are universes for other structures, they might be nodding too, each in its own mathematics, each silently coherent. The idea is not meant to estrange you. It is meant to reassure you that coherence runs deep, deeper than species and planets, and even the particular constants we measure here. Inhale, counting softly. Let the symbols blur into images, a space that curves like a saddle, where light fans more quickly than your intuition expects, a space that loops like a donut, where a ray returns to its beginning without ever turning. A network world where the notion of near is nothing like your street map, because closeness means a few edges along a graph, not a smooth stride across a floor. A physics that makes sense there, because the mathematics makes sense there, just as ours does here. You might never walk those corridors, but you can imagine their air. The multiverse, in all these voices, is not a roar, but a choir, most of it too far to hear. Its presence is a hypothesis, not a verdict, and the tests that could support it are subtle, a faint pattern in the cosmic afterglow that hints at a peculiar topology, a statistical clue that our constants sit among many possibilities. The cool logic that quantum theory already uses to reproduce interference by letting branches exist, whether we speak of them or not. There is controversy, as there should be. Science is careful with its dreams, but it is also honest about the reach of its equations. When mathematics offers many solutions and some are born in the fire of measurement, it is not reckless to wonder whether the remaining solutions live somewhere too, behind horizons, physical or conceptual. Even the boldest step, the notion that all mathematics is real, that every consistent structure is a universe, can be held gently as a meditation rather than a pledge. It replaces "why this?" with "because it is one of the possibilities that can be," which to some ears is satisfying and to others is a door that leads to more questions. Both reactions are welcome here. In the quiet, you do not need to choose tonight. You can simply rest in the thought that the world is as intelligible as it is beautiful, and that intelligibility might be the beauty's source. Numbers, for their part, are not cold in the dark. They are like constellations the mind draws to make sense of scattered lights, and in a deeper sense, they might be the lights and the spaces between them as well. An equation is not merely a rule, it is a relation that can be inhabited. When you balance a chemical reaction, you assert equality. When space-time satisfies Einstein's equation, the content and the curve acknowledge each other's shape. The feeling of fit is the same. It's the feeling you have when your breath meets your body's need. Exactly. Not too much, not too little. The feeling of a key turning without friction. Let this be the takeaway you can carry even as sleep folds around you. Whether or not every possible mathematics blossoms into a universe, the mathematics we have is a lantern that lights the path remarkably far, and the path has matched the lantern's glow at every step. From planetary arcs to GPS signals, from the spectral lines of hydrogen to the arcing jets of black holes, from the lattice of crystal to the lattice of the early sky, the fit endures. A hypothesis that reality is mathematics is one way of explaining the fit. A humbler phrasing is that reality is so deeply patterned that mathematics is the most natural way to meet it. Either way, the comfort is the same. Coherence is not an accident. It is the air. Exhale, unhurried. Somewhere, a proof completes itself in a quiet mind. Somewhere else, a star completes a slow turn, its light sliding along a geodesic, the way a bead slides on a thread. Possibility branches and continues whether or not anyone watches. Bubble worlds bud and drift in inflation's long tide, if that story is true. In rooms like yours, questions turn their faces towards sleep and soften. You don't need to hold the whole architecture. You only need to know it holds you. The symbols can fade now, like chalk after rain. The patterns remain. The breath stays steady. The night is broad and full of gentle order. Let the mind rest on a simple picture, a snowflake turning in a quiet beam of light. However you rotate it, some part of its pattern echoes what came before. That sameness through change is the heart of symmetry, and once you notice it, the world looks stitched together by hidden repeats. A circle is unchanged when spun. A honeycomb keeps its order as you slide along it. A chord feels the same in a new key. if the intervals stay faithful. Physics learned to listen for those invariances, and the listening revealed a promise. Whenever nature keeps a pattern steady under a transformation, something measurable remains conserved. The insight feels like a lullaby for the mind, soft, inevitable, and deeply reassuring. A century ago, a mathematician traced this promise with clarity that still glows. If time translation symmetry holds, if the laws don't care whether an experiment happens today or tomorrow, energy is conserved. If space has no preferred direction, momentum is conserved. If turning something leaves the rules unchanged, angular momentum endures. The statement is spare and generous at once. Whenever the universe hums the same tune under a shift, a constant appears, like a calm note held beneath the melody. Close your eyes and you can almost feel it, patterns that refuse to break and give rise to quantities that refuse to fade. From this gentle principle rises a grand grammar. Modern physics names its symmetries with the language of groups, collections of transformations that can be combined and undone without leaving the family. It sounds abstract, but the effect is tangible. The very list of elementary particles and the ways they embrace or repel each other are shaped by the symmetries those groups allow. Swap certain internal labels on a particle, and the equations don't flinch. Follow those swaps to their logical end, and a whole force field steps into view. The Standard Model is built that way, like a dance carefully choreographed, so that every spin and exchange leaves the deeper pattern intact. You don't need the names to feel the calm of the idea. The universe loves consistency, and symmetry is the form that love takes. Then comes the moment every quiet room knows: stillness, stirring into difference. A system can begin in a state of high symmetry, where many transformations change nothing, and then cool or shift into a state that chooses a direction, a phase, a role. This gentle choosing is called symmetry breaking, and it's how sameness gives birth to variety. Imagine a perfectly upright pencil balanced on its tip. Any direction is possible, but the instant it falls, a single orientation becomes real. Early in cosmic time, fields that once hid forces within a single cloak let the cloak slip. Interactions that were united separated into distinct powers with distinct ranges, and particles acquired masses the way dew gathers on blades of grass. The deep rules didn't change, the state of the world did. From that quiet bifurcation, structure unfolded: stars, chemistry, life, thought. Symmetry held the blueprint, breaking wrote the story. The idea stretches beyond familiar forces toward possible worlds. Different symmetry groups carve different grammars, and grammars make different sentences possible. Choose one internal symmetry, and you get the cast of particles we know. Choose another, and you would populate a stage with different actors and lines, different charges to be conserved, different fields to ripple. Even the stage itself, the geometry and topology of space, has its symmetries. Rotate a sphere, and it looks the same. Slide along a flat plane, and nothing changes. Loop through a torus, and you return without turning. Each underlying invariance nudges the physics that can live there. The multiverse, seen through this lens, becomes a gallery of patterns realized. Each universe an answer to the question, what if the invariances were these? Mathematics sits at the center of this gallery, like a quiet conductor. It doesn't merely label what we see, it guides what is allowed to happen. When equations are written, they don't just summarize yesterday, they make testable promises about tomorrow. Planets trace ellipses because a certain symmetry, no preferred direction in empty space, leads to conservation of angular momentum, and ellipses are what conservation looks like under gravity's geometry. Light bends around mass because the straightest lines in curved space-time are not the lines you draw with a ruler on a table. The symmetry of the metric tells the photon where straight is. Electrons gather in standing waves because Schrödinger's equation respects a symmetry that turns phase into charge. Time and again, math predicts, and the world nods. The fit is so steady that the difference between describing and being can fade in the quiet of contemplation. Sometimes, the mathematics arrives decades early, like a traveler who knows the way before roads exist. Non-Euclidean geometries were curiosities on paper until the sky revealed their signature in starlight grazing the Sunday. Abstract groups were games of transformation until particle colliders started telling the steps. Even the idea of higher dimensional spaces, once a romantic whisper, found disciplined use in theories that attempt to weave quantum threads with gravitational cloth. It can feel as if the universe is a library and mathematics is the catalog where the books were shelved long before we learned to read them. Whether we call this discovery or invention, the effect is the same. Equations turn out to be lanterns that light real paths. If patterns rule so deeply, it's natural to wonder how far their jurisdiction reaches. Consider different mathematical models as different climates. Change the curvature of space, and triangles accumulate more or less than 180 degrees. Gravity alters its stride accordingly, building galaxies quicker or slower. Allow space-time to be discrete, a lattice instead of a smooth sheet, and motion becomes steps, not slides. Cause and effect follow graph lines instead of geodesics. Exchange one internal symmetry group for another, and conservation laws shift their accents. Forces may merge or multiply. The menu of particles rearranges. Tweak the constants as if adjusting the tuning pegs, and stellar furnaces might never ignite or would burn too hot to give planets time to settle. Each adjustment is not merely cosmetic. It writes a different book. Out of this variety blooms a widened sense of real. Traditionally, reality is what telescopes and sensors register here in our cosmic neighborhood. The mathematical multiverse invites a broader, quieter thought. Every consistent structure may be granted existence in its own right, each one a complete, self-contained grammar with sentences we could never utter. This wideness doesn't dismiss our world, it contextualizes it. The laws we measure could be one dialect among many, exquisite for life because we are fluent in it, not because it is the only tongue the universe could speak. The fine-tuned feeling that certain numbers seem balanced on knife edges is softened if all balances are tried somewhere. Where conditions cut paths for complexity, observers can appear and wonder at the cut. Where they don't, silence keeps its own kind of order. Epistemology, the study of what we can know, rests an elbow on this windowsill and looks out. If there are uncountably many mathematical worlds, each with its rules, then science becomes a local craft with universal leanings. We learn our neighborhood in exquisite detail and infer what neighborhoods elsewhere might be like from the structure of the map itself. Universal truths may be the theorems that hold across structures. Local truths are the laws that sing in the kind of world we inhabit. Far from diminishing science, This view makes its achievements more dear. To know anything in depth in a reality that could have been otherwise is to have found a vein of clarity in a mountain of possibility. There's a tender human question threaded through all of this. Where do we fit if our universe is one among many? The answer that comes back is gentle. Meaning is not measured by the census of worlds. It is felt in the texture of experience. A lullaby is not less soothing because other songs exist. A life is not less vivid because other arrangements of matter would play different tunes. If anything, plurality can be freeing. It suggests that existence is generous, willing to host many forms of coherence, among which ours is one. The multiverse does not flatten significance, it disperses it like stars across a winter sky. The weave of symmetry goes on to tie unifications that once seemed unlikely. Electricity and magnetism revealed themselves as one field when the right equations admitted a symmetry that turned one into the other, rotate in a certain abstract space, and what was purely electric becomes partly magnetic. Gravitation joined geometry when the symmetry of space-time, its invariance under smooth coordinate changes, took center stage. Each union is a lowering of temperature in the mind. What had been two stories becomes one told in a richer tongue. The pattern here suggests a direction for curiosity. Look for invariances, and where you find them, expect a conservation, a connection, a simplification that feels like a deep exhale. Even the criticisms that gather around bold ideas keep their voices low in this room. It's true that defining energy for the whole universe is subtle when space-time itself stretches. True that dark matter and dark energy are inferred partners, not yet introduced by name. True that some mathematical structures may be too austere or too wild to house chemistry, warmth, or minds. None of this negates the pull of the idea that symmetry and its breaking could select whole families of worlds. It only reminds us to walk slowly and keep our measurements close, our metaphors honest. A softer, stranger thought drifts in at the edge. If mathematical universes are self-contained grammars, can grammars ever rhyme across their boundaries? In our world, quantum entanglement ties outcomes together so tightly that distance can't loosen the knot. Measure here, and correlations appear there, with no message sent, no signal slipping through space. It is not that something travels, it is that the description was never separable to begin with. By analogy, no more than that, one can daydream about couplings across mathematical realities, patterns that match at a level deeper than space and time, alignments of information rather than exchanges of stuff. This is speculation, a feather blown across still water, but it says something kind. Even if universes don't interact, the idea of resonance need not end at our walls. Coherence might have layers we barely name. Breathe in, slowly, as if tracing a symmetry with your finger along a carved edge. Breathe out, and let the pattern repeat, altered by nothing you can see. Somewhere, the cosmos keeps its quiet invariances, and because of them, charges and momenta endure. Somewhere earlier, a field cooled and chose a direction, and because of that, masses appeared and stars could light. Somewhere deeper, the grammar that permits such stories sits without hurry, a mathematical structure being itself. The comfort here is not in having solved the night, but in feeling how much of the night is ordered. Patterns hold. When they loosen, they do so by rules that make new music possible. If the notion that reality is mathematical feels austere, lean into its warmth instead. Mathematics, in this light, is not an icy grid but a collection of symmetries and relations that make room for motion without chaos, variety without collapse. It's the way a lullaby repeats the theme so the mind can drift while still knowing where it is. You don't have to carry names or proofs into sleep. It's enough to know that when nature keeps a pattern, something precious is preserved. When nature gently lets a pattern break, something new can begin. Between those two gestures, holding and releasing, the universe breathes. Let the room dim a little more. The snowflake spins and is still itself. The honeycomb holds. The galaxies spiral according to an ancient, patient score. Your own breath falls into step with these quiet invariances, in a soft keeping out, a soft letting go. Somewhere, equations balance like stones on a calm shore. Somewhere else, new symmetries are found by minds unhurried and awake. Here, the night gathers its gentle order around you, and the patterns that stitch the world keep watch. Try a new doorway tonight, not the mirror-smooth corridors of equations, not the lattice of symmetries, but a quieter threshold. The feeling you get when a key turns without scraping, when a melody lands on a note that seems pre-agreed with the air. Some people hear that feeling in the fabric of the universe and give it a name, intention. Others call it luck, stretched thin over immensity. Either way, the hush that follows is the same. Let that hush widen as you settle, and we'll walk along the shoreline where chance, necessity, and purpose lay their smooth stones. Begin with a thought that has lulled philosophers, physicists, and midnight wanderers alike. The settings of reality seem uncannily well suited for structure, warmth, and life. Gravity is gentle enough to let galaxies bloom instead of collapsing everything at once, yet strong enough to gather gas into stars. The electromagnetic force binds atoms with a firmness that allows chemistry to hold hands long enough to compose oceans and cells and songs. The early expansion of space was swift, but not so reckless that matter never found itself again. Tilt any of these dials a little, just a little, and the story grows sparse. No long-lived stars to cook heavy elements. No stable atoms to braid into molecules. No calm harbors for thinking creatures to wonder at their own luck. This is the fine-tuning thought, and it arrives like a soft question. Did the dials land where they did by a roll of some cosmic dice, or did someone set them? For many minds, the odds feel too thin to leave to tumble. Imagine a safe that opens only when 100 tumblers click to just so positions. Imagine it opening on the first try, without a plan. That surprise, the sense that small deviations would have left the room empty, has led some to infer a mind behind the tuning, a chooser of constants, a composer of laws, not a tinkerer in the machine, but the one who wrote the instrument's range. Another path to the same quiet center begins with causality, a rule as homely as a rocking chair. Things that begin have reasons. If this cup exists, it is because someone shaped clay. If this song plays, it is because someone plucked a string. Carry that calm rule far enough, and it knocks at the largest door. The universe began. Our best science speaks of a hot, dense state unfolding about 13.8 billion years ago. So what, if anything, made the beginning begin? The most familiar answer in that line of thought is a cause outside the scene it starts, a source not subject to the time and space it introduces. Some call this source a divine creator, not pushed by earlier pushes, unconfined by the stage it sets. The picture has a comforting geometry. A lantern chain can be very long, but somewhere there must be a hook on which the first lantern hangs. Older voices say it with a different cadence and the same longing for coherence. Aristotle pictured an unmoved mover, a being that does not need to be nudged because it is already fully what it is, pure act, no waiting to become. Thomas Aquinas, listening to Aristotle with a Christian ear, wrote that an infinite regress of causes cannot account for why anything is here at all. The chain requires an anchor, and all call this God. He also thought about contingency, the way most things could just as well have failed to be. If every being were like that, there would have been nothing, and nothing breeds nothing. So there must be at least one necessary being whose existence isn't borrowed or conditional, the ground from which contingencies flower like grasses after rain. Across traditions, the images change their garments but keep their shape. In the book of Genesis, a voice calls light from darkness and divides waters from waters, speaks land and sea, sun and moon, seed and animal into their appointed places, and rests not as fatigue, but as completion, a pause that blesses the order made. Read, literally, it is a calendar of days. Read, allegorically, it is a map of meaning, a cosmos as gift and task, a world in which arrangement is not accident, but love in sequence. In Hindu ways of seeing, the story breathes longer. Creation is not a single event, but a cycle, vast days and nights of Brahma, with universes blossoming, fading, and blossoming again, like lotuses in an eternal pond. Vishnu preserves, Shiva dissolves. Dissolution is not a catastrophe, but the clearing that allows another dawn. The Rig Veda sings of Purusha, a cosmic being whose self-offering becomes the world, as if the universe began with a sacred generosity. Another tale churns the cosmic ocean, gods and demons together, stirring existence until nectar rises, immortality skimmed from effort and turmoil. Symbol speaks where prose fails, order drawn from depth, meaning distilled from motion. The Quran places creation in the hands of Allah, one without partner, who orders a world from smoke like darkness and sets it firm in stages. The heavens raised without pillars you can see, the earth spread and provisioned, each thing measured. The emphasis is unity and power, no committee of gods, no rival wills. The universe is independent of nothing and dependent upon one. The story walks with the rhythm of be, and it is. Buddhist cosmology, gentler and more reticent about beginnings, offers a different solace. Reality is process, a grand circulation shaped by causality's net. Worlds arise and pass according to law and condition. No single artisan stamps them with a seal. Karma, action and consequence, weaves the pattern across ages. Here the comfort is that no one is excluded from the making of meaning. Every small intention participates in the shape of things. The question, who began it, is less urgent than the question, how shall we act in the flow? Look long enough across this tapestry, and a common thread glints, the intuition that what is leans on what does not need. Whether that ground is personal or impersonal, named or unnamed, singular or beyond count, the sense is of a source from which contingency takes breath. The phrase, first cause, is a placeholder for that ground. In some tellings it is someone, in others it is the ultimate fact, the suchness that does not ask leave to be. In some Eastern streams, Brahman is that non-personal, all-pervading reality, the ocean of being from which waves of worlds lift and fall. In others, the ground is emptiness, not a void, but the open interdependence in which nothing stands alone and everything arises together. Modern cosmology stands nearby with its own lamp. The Big Bang model describes an early, hot, dense state from which space itself expanded, cooling and dressing itself in particles, atoms, stars. At that earliest edge, our equations squint. Some see in that squint a signpost pointing back to a cause outside the script. Others expect that a better script, quantum gravity, a fuller union of the known will, write the prelude in natural letters. These stances don't have to shout at each other. One can hold questions subtly, like a book left open on the nightstand, confident there will be time to read more lines tomorrow. Return, gently, to fine-tuning the tilts and ranges that make life possible. The imagery is homey and audacious at once. Knobs on a control panel, a bank of dials set within hair's breadths. The gravitational constant, the strengths of the nuclear forces, the ratio between expansion and attraction widely scatter them, and likely no stars rise, no carbon forms in the hot bellies of suns, no chemistry persists. Some thinkers, like the physicist priest John Polkinghorne, have taken the elegance and fruitfulness of the laws themselves as a hint of mind that the intelligibility of the world whispers of an intelligence behind it. Others, like philosopher Robin Collins, argue that life-permitting ranges are so narrow that intention is a more satisfying account than happenstance. Not a proof in the courtroom sense, but a cumulative persuasion, like a poem that feels too shaped to be an accident of letters. There are, to be fair and calm, other ways to quiet the surprise. One is multiplicity. Perhaps reality is much larger than our view, hosting countless universes in which the dials are set to many values. If everything that can be tuned is tuned somewhere, then finding oneself in a life-friendly neighborhood is not shocking. It is an instance of selection. You can only wake up where waking is permitted. Another is deeper law. Perhaps what looks like a choice among many is in fact the only consistent arrangement, or one of a small set determined by mathematics we have yet to fully uncover. In these tellings, purpose is not pushed out. It's simply not required to explain the settings. The door is not locked either way. It stands ajar, inviting patient curiosity. The cosmological family of arguments keeps walking along the strand, pointing now to causality, now to contingency. The Kalam version is tidy. Whatever begins has a cause. The universe began. Therefore, the universe has a cause. If the cause is beyond space and time, it wears attributes like immaterial, timeless, powerful, by necessity, because the effect is the very stage and clock we inhabit. Aquinas's contingency argument is more like the image of a field of lamps. If each draws its glow from another, the series needs an original that glows by its own nature, or else there is no light to start with. These images are not meant to compel by force. They are meant to clarify. what kind of thing one would be positing if one said, God. Stories remain faithful to these ideas by telling them in ways a child could hold. Genesis stacks days like building blocks. Hindu myths churn oceans and speak of breaths so long they become aeons. The Quran counts stages of ordering, presence by presence. Buddhist cosmology follows cycles that pay attention to law more than to first moments. Each language holds a lantern to the same two questions. Why is there something rather than nothing? Why does the something hold together in so orderly a way? Pause here. Let the room slow. Inhale in 3. Exhale in 4. You can feel the kinship between fine-tuning and first cause. Both sense a delicate coordination. Both wonder whether coordination implies a coordinator. You can also feel a kinship between the alternatives, multiverse and deeper mathematics. Both lean on abundance of worlds, of structure to make the surprise gentler. The choices need not jostle you awake. They can drift like constellations past a window. You can notice patterns without needing to fix their final names. There is a humane way to sit with all of this. Let the arguments be what they are, invitations to consider whether meaning is woven into the world at foundational levels, whether the universe is not merely calculable, but also intended. Let the counter-arguments be what they are, invitations to trust that lawful fecundity may be enough to account for the apparent specialness, that the human impulse to tell a story with a protagonist may not map onto the cosmos at its largest scale. Between those invitations is a wide bench where the body rests and the breath steadies. You don't need to adjudicate tonight. You can let the ideas keep watch, like kindly guardians at the edge of sleep. If you want a picture to take with you as the thoughts grow soft, try this: a hall of clocks, each keeping perfect time. One person says, there must be a clockmaker. Another says, there are so many halls that all arrangements occur somewhere, and we are surprised only because we woke in this one. A third says, timekeeping is built into the nature of the gears themselves. None of them needs to be scolded. Each is feeling after coherence with the tools they trust: intention, multiplicity, necessity. Meanwhile, the clocks tick, and their ticking sustains the hush. A final word can be a gentle one. Whether the universe is tuned by a mind, selected by a multitude, or constrained by deep mathematics, the night sky remains an instrument that plays reliably and with grace. The same constants that let stars ignite also let neurons whisper. The same early expansion that cooled space to a life-friendly calm left an afterglow we can map like a cradle song. The same logic that carries arguments about causes carries the light of distant galaxies to your eye, delayed by billions of years, arriving right on time. It is enough for now to float inside that coherence. The breath moves in, the breath moves out. Purpose and chance sit side by side like old friends on a porch, watching the dark fields. Somewhere, a story says, let there be light, and light is. Somewhere else, a cosmic ocean is churned, and sweetness rises. Somewhere, law alone draws order from possibility, and the drawing is beautiful. Let your shoulders drop. Let the day's edges blur. If a presence made the dials, it is patient. If a multitude explains our good fortune, it is generous. If mathematics alone carries the tune, it is wondrous. In every telling, the stars keep their posts, and the constants keep their covenant. The universe holds, and you can rest inside its holding. The room dims, the clocks agree, and the gentle argument of existence hums. steady and low, until sleep takes your hand. In this stillness, two quiet questions share the same chair: how and why. One traces mechanisms, the other listens for meaning. They don't quarrel tonight. They lean shoulder to shoulder like old friends in the half-light. When the sea draws back, it leaves both patterns in the sand, the ripples from the tide and the footprints of a passerby. Some minds call the ripples science and the footprints faith. Some say the ripples are enough. Let the room be gentle as we hold both images at once, letting neither glare nor doubt startle us awake. There is a way of seeing that lets evolution keep its long, patient stride, while prayer keeps its warmth. The name given to this way is simple. One, reality. Two, lenses. The lens of biology tells how life diversifies. Small variations, sifted by environments and time, building eyes that read starlight and fingers that learn to write. The other lens says this unfolding is not godless, but godly, that the long grammar of genes is a kind of providence written in a language of cells. Theistic evolution wears that posture. No God of the gaps, no emergency interventions to patch ignorance, just the conviction that the known processes are themselves the means by which a creator delights to work. It's the difference between a magician and a composer, the showy surprise versus the deep pleasure of a theme developing with inevitability. Thinkers who walk easily between laboratory and chapel often speak of complementarity. Two descriptions. One, world. The particle has a position and a momentum, but not in the same breath. A life has mechanism and meaning, but not always in the same sentence. John Polkinghorne liked to say that science answers questions of process, while faith leans toward purpose. Francis Collins has stood in a genome's cathedral and heard both the letters and the liturgy. This isn't about smuggling divinity into the cracks where knowledge falters. It's about recognizing that knowing how a fire burns does not empty the fire of what it means to someone shivering at night. Sacred texts can be honored with the same tenderness applied to star catalogs. Read with care, aware of genre, alive to poetry's precision. The 6 days that Genesis stacks like stepping stones can be held as a liturgy of order rather than a stopwatch, a hymn that says good again and again as structure emerges from unformed, deep days. In this hearing are the lanterns guiding thought through a temple, not the stopwatch timing a laboratory run. The Earth's rocks keep their own honest clocks, billions of years counted in crystals and collisions, and the symbolic reading doesn't fear those clocks. It lets theology keep its promise about purpose, while geology and cosmology keep theirs about duration and change. Meaning and measurement sit side by side on the bench, neither trying to steal the other's pen. This companionship extends beyond text to the laws themselves. The principle of contingency whispers that the world could have been otherwise. Constants sit at values that permit complexity. Equations knit geometry and matter in ways that allow stars to cook heavy elements and planets to cool to the temperate. A theologian looks at that contingency and hears freedom, a creator who could have chosen many worlds and chose this one, with its particular aptness for life and learning. A physicist looks and hears a different music, perhaps a deeper constraint we don't yet see, perhaps a wide landscape in which many worlds are realized and ours simply happens to be hospitable. The two melodies can be heard together without dissonance if we allow the possibility that choice and law are not enemies. From these strands, an integrated picture can be woven, the kind that lets a person hold a fossil in one hand and a prayer in the other without feeling torn. Science keeps us honest about what happens and how. Theology keeps us awake to the possibility that happening is held within a larger intention. When they are not pressed into the service of scoring points, they enrich each other like harmony lines in a song, distinct, interdependent, steadying, and yet, near the edge of the candlelight, objections keep their vigil. Some are as old as philosophy's first steps. The problem of evil waits there, severe and necessary. If the source of all things is all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-good, why should the world contain such raw pain? The logical form of the question is sharp. An omnipotent being could remove all evil. An omniscient being would know which evils to remove and how. An omnibenevolent being would want to remove them, yet suffering persists. The neat triangle of attributes seems to pinch against the reality of earthquakes and cancers and cruelty. One reply appeals to freedom as a good large enough to warrant risk. If creatures are to love and not merely behave, to grow and not merely function, they must be able to choose, and choosing includes the power to harm. In that defense, moral evil is not a flaw in the fabric but a cost of dignity, a cost the Creator permits so that the highest goods can exist at all. The reply does not touch every sorrow. Storms and viruses are not choices, and yet they wound, but it offers shape to part of the dark. It says, a world without the possibility of wrong would also lack the possibility of right, freely embraced. The objection shifts, then, from logic to likelihood. Even if some evil is compatible with a good creator, does this seemingly pointless suffering, belong in a world governed by care? The evidential challenge names particular griefs gratuitous, disproportionate, and asks whether a benevolent source would write them into the script. Here the answers become quieter. One response imagines soul-making, a theater in which courage, compassion, patience, and hope are cultivated not in spite of difficulty, but through it. Not all pain grows a soul, but some does, and the story of a person often includes a turning in the valley that could not have been learned on the ridge. Another response bows before the limits of finite minds. Perhaps we are not well placed to judge the full tapestry by the knot we can see. Perhaps reasons lie across horizons we have not crossed. Skeptical theism is the sober name for that posture, less a shrug than a recognition that insight has borders. Other objections are more surgical. Parsimony suggests we not multiply entities beyond necessity. If natural explanations account for the patterns we observe from cosmic background radiation to the branching of life, why add a supernatural hypothesis? The razor is a tool of method, not a guillotine of meaning, but it does ask us to justify every layer we lay over the data. A theist might answer that parsimony counts simplicity in laws and richness in explanation differently, and that one mind behind many laws is in its own way a simpler story than a brute collage. A naturalist might reply that mind itself is the collage we need to explain. The conversation can remain respectful, each side acknowledging the other's sense of what counts as a satisfying account. Then there is the worry about moving the puzzle one step back. If everything that begins must have a cause, Who, then, causes the cause? The traditional answer exempts the divine from the category things that begin, placing it instead in the category necessary being, which does not derive its existence from anything prior. Critics hear special pleading. Defenders hear a conceptual distinction. Contingent beings, explainable by reference to something else, versus a being whose very nature is to be. The terms can feel abstract in the small hours, but the tug they represent is familiar. Explanation seeks a resting place that does not wobble. A different current flows from existentialist shores. Suppose there is no cosmic author. Meaning must then be made, not found. Purpose is not received, but chosen. Sartre called this freedom a burden and a gift, the human project to carve value from contingency with no divine permission slip. Nietzsche, more fierce and lyrical, imagined a revaluation in which life affirms itself without appeal to a beyond. In this view, invoking a creator is not merely unnecessary, it risks dulling the blade of agency. The night can hold this current too, without fear. Many have lived bravely under its star. All these voices, the reconcilers and the skeptics, the soul makers and the razor bearers, can be arranged in a circle rather than a duel. Each offers a way to honor something true: the reliability of natural law, the fertility of evolution, the ache for purpose, the scandal of suffering, the desire for clean explanation, the dignity of human choice. None is complete alone. Together, they make an honest weather in which a person can sleep without pretending certainty they do not have. Inhale gently, like drawing a curtain. Exhale, as if setting a book face down to keep your place. The sea of ideas will still be there in the morning. If you rest with the thought that science and faith can share a table, the night makes room. If you rest with the thought that parsimony and protest against suffering argue against divinity, the night makes room. If you rest without choosing, that is also a choice, and the night honors it. Meanwhile, stars burn by rules we understand and by wonder we do not exhaust. The earth turns. Somewhere, a researcher adjusts a lens. Somewhere, a pilgrim lights a candle. The same darkness shelters both. Let it shelter you. A hush gathers at the edge of language, where explanations fall quiet and songs take over. That's where origin stories live, in the soft place between measure and meaning. Long before spectrographs and satellites, people listened to the dark and answered with images. Light called from nothing, eggs of heaven cracking, oceans murmuring names. Each tale was a lantern held up to the same night, and each lantern carved its own gentle circle, enough to see our faces and the first steps of the world. One familiar lantern glows with the cadence of days. In the opening of Genesis, order arrives like a steady pulse, light and dark, waters separated, land rising, seeds waking, the sky jeweled, the seas quickening with life, the ground learning to walk. Then, rest and exhale written into the structure of things. However you read the poem, literal calendar, or liturgy of meaning, it leans toward a single intention, a world not thrown together, but spoken into shape. Good, named again and again, humans invited to tend rather than to own. Another light is more bodily, more earth-scented. In the Chinese story of Pangu, a cosmic egg holds chaos until the being inside pulls sky from earth, lifting the roof with his growing frame. When he finally lies down, his breath becomes wind, his voice thunder, His left eye the sun, his right eye the moon. Mountains gather from his bones, rivers flow from his veins. Creation is not distant command, but intimate transformation. The world is a body shared, everything kin to everything else. Across the Pacific, an island chain listens to an older chant. The Kumulipo begins in darkness, thick with potential, and unspools as genealogy. Coral giving way to fish, birds to gods, gods to chiefs, night to day. It's less a single moment than a lineage, one generation rising from another, everything related by birth. The chant reminds its hearers that to name yourself is to name your ancestors, human and more than human, and to recognize life as a braid rather than a list. On the Indian subcontinent, a hymn imagines a being so vast that the cosmos could be woven from a single holy offering. Purusha is divided, and from that sacrifice, the world takes its forms, deities, elements, the measures of social life. Beyond the hymn, the wider pattern of Hindu thought breathes in cycles: creation, preservation, dissolution, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, like the three parts of a heartbeat. Endings are not failures, but compost for beginnings. Time is a wheel, not a razor-thin line. Far to the east of deserts and rivers, in the lands of mesas and high light, stories travel by breath and firelight. In Navajo tellings, people emerge through a sequence of worlds, each with its own lessons and mistakes, carrying pollen and prayers into the next. Creation here is a journey undertaken together, with songs as maps and ceremonies as repairs. The emphasis falls not on a single act, but on the work of balanced community with earth, sky, and the beings who share them. In the chill between realms, the Norse imagined a gap of yawning openness, Ginnunga Gap, where heat from one side met ice from the other. Melting gave life to Ymir, the first giant, and from his body the gods fashioned what we know: flesh for soil, bones for mountains, blood for seas. It's a tale of tension and transformation, of a world hammered out where opposites meet, not peaceful at first, but enduring. Different coastlines, different fires, different languages, and still, the family resemblance is hard to miss. Chaos settles into order, often through word or breath. Sacrifice becomes structure. Elements lean against each other until a world stands. Time moves as staircase or as circle. Humans arrive not as accidents, but as participants. These motifs are less about physics than about posture, how a people locates itself within the all that is, how it learns to say we to soil and storm and stars. Faith stands nearby, not as a rival to careful measurement, but as a way of holding what lies beyond it. Where instruments stop, faith is the hand that doesn't withdraw. It is trust that meaning is real, even when proof is not available on demand. In one life, that trust flows toward a creator whose intention saturates reality. In another, it becomes fidelity to Dharma, the cosmic order. In another, it is the steady insight that everything arises together, empty of separateness, yet full of relation. Faith is not a refusal to know, it is an openness to depth. Because the night is generous, faith and science often share the same window. A person can watch the story of a hot, dense, early universe cooling into atoms and still hear, beneath the data, an old conviction that order is a gift, that intelligibility is itself astonishing. that to learn the mechanism is to be introduced, not to be dismissed. The Big Bang becomes, for some, a modern echo of a spoken beginning, and for others, a hymn to lawful fecundity. Either way, awe does the breathing, while reason names its parts. Faith also leans toward ethics. If the world arrives as gift, whether from God, from cycles of being, or from a luminous interdependence, then gratitude presses outward into care. Stewardship becomes devotion, translated into practice. Glaciers and grasslands treated not as inventory, but as inheritance. Neighbors seen not as competition, but as kin. Moral imagination widens when origin stories insist that we belong to one another. Of course, stories meet facts, and sometimes the first reading of a story strains against what telescopes and rocks report. Then, faith must stretch rather than snap. Allegory becomes a bridge rather than a retreat. Days as doxology rather than stopwatch. Genealogies as truths of relation rather than biology lessons. Inhale, let certainty loosen its grip. Exhale, let patience arrive. A faith that can listen learns to deepen, not to deny. In the end, these myths and the faiths that hold them are less about choosing a favorite than about recognizing a human need that survives every revision. The need to feel at home in a very large place. To know how hydrogen fused in the first stars is a triumph. To feel that their light carries meaning is a consolation. Between triumph and consolation, a person might find a way to sleep, kept company by chance and equations, by ancestors and photons, by the sense that the night is not empty, but full of gentle order. The room is dim now. Someone long ago cracks a cosmic egg. Someone speaks light. Someone stirs an ocean. Someone journeys upward through worlds. Heat meets ice. Darkness births a family tree. Here, modern instruments hum their own lullabies. Inhale, slow as tide. Exhale, softer still. The stories keep watch without insisting. The facts keep their promise without scolding. Somewhere, a child repeats a creation chant. Somewhere, a scientist calibrates a detector. Both are reaching toward the same horizon, and the horizon is wide enough for both. There is a kind of silence that isn't empty. It feels like the pause just before music begins, when the hall is still, yet every instrument is tuned and waiting. Imagine the cosmos beginning in a silence like that, not a void where nothing can happen, but a quiet brimming with possibility, a canvas that carries its own rules, the way the ocean carries the shape of waves, yet to rise. In that view, nothing is not the absence of everything. It is the simplest state allowed by nature, a restless hush where the smallest quiver can matter. Quantum theory gives language to that hush. At very small scales, the world refuses to sit perfectly still. Even a vacuum has a pulse. Energy flickers in and out. Pairs of particles appear and disappear, and what looks featureless from far away turns out to be alive with brief borrowings. Call them quantum fluctuations if you like. The term is crisp, but the feel is softer, like heat shimmering above a road. Most of the time, these ripples cancel, leaving no trace. Yet under the right conditions, a fluctuation can be promoted from a whisper to a headline. This is where the idea of a self-creating universe takes a seat by the window. If the vacuum is permitted to quiver, and if gravity and geometry are free to respond, then a patch of space-time can, in some models, nucleate the way a bubble forms in a pot of water just reaching a boil. The patch does not need an external spark. The spark is the rules themselves. Once born, that patch can swell ferociously fast, an episode we call inflation smoothing wrinkles, thinning any initial clutter and stretching tiny quantum ripples into macroscopic seeds. Later, the expansion relaxes. Matter cools into atoms. Atoms gather into stars. Stars cook heavier elements and lend them to planets. And somewhere, lungs learn to take slow breaths. The story is wild, but its steps are not arbitrary. Each follows the previous by the logic of fields and geometry, as if the music chose its own key and then stayed in tune. Inhale. Let the mind picture what bubble means here. Not a soap sphere drifting in air, but a region where a field, an invisible quantity that fills space, has settled into a high-energy mood and then quickly rolled into a calmer one, releasing a vast rush that drives expansion. That field is the inflaton in many models, a placeholder for whatever mechanism made the early universe balloon. During the ballooning, quantum fluctuations of the inflaton and of space-time itself are stretched to astronomical proportions. Their tiny differences in energy density become the primordial freckles later imprinted on the cosmic afterglow. Gravity leans on those freckles, and over billions of years they grow into the web of galaxies we now map across the deep sky. The childlike simplicity of the beginning, a little ripple here, a little ripple there, flowers into the intricate lace of structure. There is a companion to this picture that makes the daring feel balanced, the zero energy idea. Energy in the universe comes in two characters that add with opposite signs. Matter and radiation contribute positively masses, motion, light, gravity. Being attractive contributes negative potential energy. When things fall together, the ledger on gravity's side goes more negative. When something climbs, the ledger rises toward zero. If, in the grand sum, the positive and negative entries cancel exactly, the total may be zero, even while the page is full. In that case, a universe need not borrow from outside because the books balance within. Creation feels less like spending and more like a transaction where every debit comes with a credit written in gravity's dark ink. It's not a proof stamped in steel, but it is an elegant permission slip. Another permission comes from a different angle, the geometry of time itself. Near the earliest moments, the distinction between time and space may blur. In the no-boundary proposal, the universe is finite, yet without an edge in time. The beginning is more like the smooth pole of a sphere than a sharp rim where questions catch and tear. Ask, what came before? And the question loses its footing. The way north of the North Pole dissolves. This doesn't negate mystery. It reframes it. A self-contained cosmos can be complete without a cliff to fall from. If inflation can happen once, many versions of the theory whisper, it may happen again and again. Regions that finish inflating become pocket universes with their own local details, while other regions keep swelling and budding. In that larger inflating sea, bubbles appear like lanterns, lit at different times, each one self-contained, each one with its own settings for the deep dials of physics. Symmetry breaking does much of the setting. Early on, when energies were high, forces may have been unified, distinctions blurred. As the cosmos cooled, the symmetry of that unified state could not hold. Like frost crystals growing as water loses heat, the universe chose particular patterns from many allowed. The electromagnetic and weak forces parted ways. Particles acquired mass through the Higgs field, taking on a quiet, non-zero value everywhere. Each choice is not a whim, but a phase transition guided by the landscape of possibilities. Different choices in different bubbles would yield different laws and particles, whole families of worlds, all born from the same deeper grammar. Quantum tunneling plays a cameo in several of these tales. In ordinary life, to cross a hill you climb. In quantum life, sometimes you appear on the other side without paying the full climb, because the world, at small scales, is a probabilistic haze rather than a set of hard walls. A patch of false vacuum, a high-energy state that looks stable but isn't truly the lowest, can tunnel to a truer, lower-energy state, triggering the birth of a bubble that then inflates. From our vantage, it looks like something from nothing. From the math's vantage, it looks like the allowed drama of fields exploring their landscape. None of this requires us to banish the possibility of a mind beyond or within the rules. These models don't so much close a door as show how wide the stage is on which natural law performs. You can watch the play without knowing whether anyone built the theater, but it is striking sleepily, comfortingly striking, that the same equations that shape the path of planets and the glow of atoms also carry enough authority to write a beginning, or at least a beginning without a hard beginning. The cosmos is not a trick. It is patient arithmetic, balancing pressures against pulls, smoothness against perturbation, symmetry against the gifts that come when symmetry lets go. Symmetry breaking is worth lingering on because it tells how simplicity gives birth to variety without chaos. Picture a pencil standing on its tip, perfectly upright. It has many symmetric options. It is indifferent to direction. The instant it falls, the symmetry is broken. This direction is actual. The others are not. In the early universe, fields sat upright in high, symmetric states. Cooling was the nudge. When the Higgs field tipped into its lower, non-zero value, particles interacting with it acquired mass, some strongly, some only a little, some not at all. That differentiation set the stage for atoms, chemistry, stars, the whole orchestra, tuning to a richer key. Other fields chose their values too, and each choice constrained what could happen next. A handful of phase transitions, each honest to the mathematics, led from a smooth beginning to the textures we now call home. Inflation's fluctuations, tiny and random as dust motes in a shaft of light, were the next quiet gift. Stretch them, and they stop being random noise. They become the pattern faintly stamped in the sky's oldest light. Gravity didn't create those fluctuations. It amplified them. The dense regions pulled harder, grew denser, pulled harder still. The underdense regions yielded. In time, sheets and filaments formed, knots where galaxies would someday whirl. The same process repeats in a quieter octave today, when clouds collapse to make stars. Everywhere, the theme persists. The universe knows how to take the smallest differences and build on them. Inhale, slow and even, as if letting that theme run through you. Exhale, easing into the notion that self-creating is not defiance, it is organization. It is water making hexagons in ice without a sculptor at the lake's edge. Dunes arranging themselves in wind without a cartographer. Life's biochemistry discovering its pathways by the tug of war between chance and constraint. A self-creating cosmos is a larger version of those familiar miracles, law and fluctuation, weaving a tapestry no hand need, embroiders stitch by stitch. This doesn't answer every question that a midnight mind can raise. Why these laws, rather than others, can be met with a multiverse of all allowed laws, or with an appeal to deeper necessity. Perhaps only a few sets of rules are fully consistent. Why anything at all can be softened by no boundary geometries, or by the thought that why might be the wrong invitation to make of the earliest moments. And yet, even when the questions keep their mystery, the path they trace is gentle. They lead back, again and again, to a picture of reality as capable of writing its own opening bars. Somewhere in that picture, information becomes a subtle protagonist. The fluctuations that seed structure are not lumps of stuff, but differences in arrangement. The Higgs field's value is a setting, a line in the cosmic configuration file. Inflation magnifies information, gravity sorts it, star formation and chemistry refine it, biology stores and edits it, minds reflect on it, and in reflecting, add new chapters. A self-creating universe is also a self-organizing story of information flowing from simple beginnings to layered forms, without ever leaving the grammar that permitted beginnings in the first place. If you let the images drift past without clutching them, bubbles budding in an inflating sea, a sphere without an edge in time, a ledger whose positives and negatives cancel, pencils tipping, crystals forming, ripples stretched into galaxies, you may notice a feeling beneath the ideas. It is the feeling of coherence. Not that everything is solved, but that what is known fits together snugly enough to cradle sleep. The cosmos doesn't need to be loud to be astonishing. It can hum in a key that carries you lightly. Exhale and let the edges of the room blur. The early universe cools again in your imagination. Symmetries loosen and become features. Fields settle. Stars are seated. Space keeps breathing outward. Slow now, like a tide at rest. Whether or not any hand beyond the rules set it in motion, the rules themselves are generous. They are capable of beginning, of complexity, of lives that can tell this story and fall asleep inside it. The hush we started with is still here, but you can hear what fills it, the soft arithmetic of a universe making and remaking itself by law and by chance into a place that holds you kindly. Try listening not for a beginning, but for a pattern. Some nights the mind quiets enough to hear how the world answers itself, cause returning as effect, effect looping back as cause, like shore break breathing the beach into shape. The universe, it seems, is fluent in circles. Outputs find their way home as new inputs. Small nudges become large waves. Loud waves settle into steady tides. These are feedback loops, amplifiers and balancers braided through everything, from particles to galaxies to the weather of thought. Once you notice them, you can't unsee them. They are the hush behind the hush, the way the cosmos writes its own continuation. Start with a cloud no larger than a thought. In the early universe, matter pooled by tiny differences, slight overdensities left behind when inflation stretched quantum ripples across a newborn sky. Gravity loves a head start. Where there is a little more, it invites more. Where there is less, it lets go. That invitation is a positive feedback, a compounding. The dense patch gathers gas, grows denser, and gathers faster. At some tipping point, the cloud's center heats until hydrogen learns a new step, fusion. The first stars light, and the loop changes flavor. Radiation and stellar winds push back, carving cavities in their birth clouds. Supernovae explode, stirring and sometimes dispersing the gas that fed them. Positive became negative, a brake as well as a throttle. The result isn't silence, it's rhythm. New stars bloom at the edges of cavities. Metals astronomers speak for elements heavier than helium. Seed the medium. Dust grains form tiny laboratories where molecules assemble. The next generation inherits more possibilities. Carbon to partner with oxygen, iron to build cores, silicon to frame rocks. Enrichment is a loop of memory, written not on paper, but in starlight and ash. Step outward to galactic scales and the loops get grander and stranger. A galaxy siphons cold gas from its halo, turns some fraction into stars, and through those stars' lives and deaths, heats and stirs the very reservoirs it feeds from. At a galaxy's heart, a black hole can wake and hurl jets, heating surrounding gas so it cannot cool easily. Star formation slows. Later, the jet sleeps, the gas rests, and the galaxy breathes in again. Too much growth risks smothering. Too much heat risks sterility. Feedback steers between, not a tightrope exactly, but a wide path lined with self-corrections. Clusters of galaxies hum with similar negotiations. The intracluster medium glows in X-rays. Without energy input, it would cool and condense rapidly. But central black holes inject heat episodically, carving cavities in the hot gas, as if reminding the system not to rush. Somewhere between surge and restraint, structure sustains itself. Zoom in, and loops still govern. The Higgs field is an everywhere presence, a kind of background, yes, that grants mass to particles through their interaction with it. That interaction isn't a one-way gift. It folds back. The field's value shapes particle behavior, and particle behavior in turn shapes how the field sits. Nothing literal changes minute by minute. These are equilibria, poised states, but the logic is circular. Properties stabilize one another by being what they are. In other corners of particle physics, coupling strengths run with energy. Renormalization flows carry parameters toward fixed points as you change scale, taming what would otherwise be wild. Stability, again, through loops. Thermodynamics seems, at first, like the end of the party. Entropy spreads, gradients fade. And yet, under steady flow and far from equilibrium conditions, islands of order emerge, dissipative structures that feed on the very currents that tend to smooth things out. Heat a thin layer of fluid from below, and at the right temperature difference, it organizes itself into convection cells, hexagons of turning flow. Introduce the right reagents and lengths of diffusion, and reaction diffusion systems draw zebra stripes and leopard spots without a painter. The universe loves order that is paid for by through flow, and the payment is part of the loop. Energy in, structure forms. Energy out, structure persists. Transfer those principles to cosmic history, and you get stars, disks, jets, to geophysics, and you get plate tectonics and weather patterns, to ecology, and you get food webs and biogeochemical cycles. Life, too, is a loop of gradients, exploited and renewed. Now imagine a universe that learns this language so deeply, it writes itself with it. One way to picture it borrows a symbol from myth, the Ouroboros, a serpent consuming its tail. Not hunger, in this case, but self-reference. A bootstrap cosmos is one whose laws and contents stabilize one another in a closed choreography. The state of the universe determines the rules that allow such a state, and those rules ensure the state returns again as cause. It's dizzying only if you expect time to be a straight hallway. Consider causality as a circle you can walk without finding an end. Every step is lawful. Nothing is pulled from a hat. The trick, if there is one, lies in self-consistency. Each link allows the next, and the chain closes without breaking any rule. Quantum mechanics makes the idea less outlandish. At small scales, possibility is a mist. Systems exist in superpositions until interactions with their environment. Measurements in the broadest sense select outcomes. Those selections are exchanges of information, and information, more than stuff, is what loops can trade. If the universe is early state constrained and was constrained by the space of allowable laws, you get a circle that is logic tight, even if it is temporally odd. Some thinkers formalize this with consistency conditions. Loops are permitted in spacetimes and quantum histories, provided they forbid paradox. The famous river whose mouth feeds its source is no longer nonsense. It's a geometry where water finds a continuous path. Feedback in cosmology's dawn was brutal and beautiful. Inflation is itself a loop of sorts. A high energy field drives rapid expansion. That expansion stretches the field's quantum fluctuations. Those stretched fluctuations feed back into the field's energy density and into the gravitational field, subtly altering the rate of expansion as inflation winds down. Out of the loop comes a nearly uniform universe with the tiniest, invaluable unevenness baked into it. Later, as matter begins to dominate, gravity takes those unevennesses and amplifies them positive feedback until they reach nonlinear scales. Then negative feedback steps in. Pressure, radiation, and rotation resist collapse. Angular momentum and magnetic fields distribute energy. Turbulence mixes, and cooling radiates away heat. Systems overshoot, correct, overshoot less, settle into cycles. The cosmic web is a record of such negotiated compromises. These loops don't end with stars and galaxies. On rocky worlds, geophysical cycles bind air, water, and stone into a slow conversation. Volcanoes exhale carbon. Rain and rock draw it down. Tectonic plates bury and return it. Ice brightens a planet, reflecting sunlight, encouraging more ice in a cold snap. Dark oceans drink light and warm, encouraging more melt in a hot swing. Clouds thicken with warmth as evaporation speeds, then cool by shading. Forests rain themselves by seeding clouds above their own leaves. Positive loops push, negative loops hold. Climate hovers within zones where liquid water lingers. Into this balancing act, life inserts 100,000 new loops. Microbes breathed an atmosphere into being. Photosynthesis learned to bank sunlight in sugars. Oxygen rose and rusted the world and powered new metabolisms. Roots cracked rock faster, drawing down carbon. Shells locked carbon into limestone. Fungi and bacteria returned it. Life is not merely in an environment. It manufactures one, reacts to the changes it causes, and changes again. Brains are feedback creatures par excellence. Neurons excite and inhibit in knotted motifs. Recurrent networks echo their own patterns. Attention selects signals that then reconfigure attention. A thought becomes a habit. A habit shapes the likelihood of a thought. Societies build tools that build societies that build tools. Culture loops. Stories seed behaviors that seed new stories. Somewhere in this layered feedback, awareness arises, not a substance, but a process. not summoned by fiat, but emerging from loops, piled upon loops. The lullaby you're hearing now participates. Words soothe breath. Breath slows thought. Slowed thought welcomes more soothing words. A small loop, but honest. Under all of this runs a subtler currency: information. John Wheeler's playful, serious slogan, "It from bit," says that what we call things might be, at root, stable answers to binary questions. Is the spin up or down? Has the atom emitted the photon or not? At a measurement, probabilities crystallize into facts. Facts are recorded differences. Differences are information. Landauer taught us that erasing information costs energy. Bekenstein taught us that a system's information capacity relates to its surface. Black holes, once thought to be graveyards for information, turn out, in our best accounts, to be accountants. Their event horizons encode the tally of what has fallen in, and as they evaporate via Hawking radiation, the tally scrambled, but complete leaks back across eons. Holography goes further, suggesting that volumes may be fully described by information on their boundaries. Loops of matter and energy become loops of bits and qubits. Dynamics becomes an algorithm. The universe runs on itself. If the cosmos is computation, feedback is the program counter and the memory bus. State writes to state. Outputs reroute to inputs. Error correction stabilizes patterns. Redundancy allows resilience. Emergence is what these loops look like when watched from a quiet distance. Simple update rules generate intricate tapestries. Grains of sand topple on a pile until a critical slope forms. Avalanches of many sizes occur spontaneously. An economy of scale written into the physics. Reaction diffusion rules paint the hides of animals without a single zebra knowing calculus. The same mathematics that governs these toy worlds echoes up the ladder. Neural avalanches in cortex, city growth along transit lines, language shifting by invisible pressures, markets heating and cooling in self-fulfilling waves. None of it is magic. All of it feels miraculous at 3 a.m. Even causality, stern teacher that it is, softens at the edges in these rooms. In daily life, we need arrows, before and after. Push, then move. Seed, then sprout. Physics obliges locally, but globally, space-time may be more like a tapestry than a narrated line. In a block universe perspective, every event has its place in a four-dimensional whole. Consistency across the whole is what matters most. In such a picture, a self-creating loop does not offend. It is simply a closed embroidery within a consistent design. We still experience time as flow, and flow matters. Thermodynamics keeps its arrow. Entropy keeps climbing, but the permission for closure exists. The river that seems to feed itself does so because the map is larger than the riverbank. Take one last walk through the constellations of feedback before letting sleep take the watch. Small density ripples become stars. Stars forge elements. Elements build dust and worlds. Worlds cycle air and water. Life alters air and water and returns to rock. Minds write stories that change minds. On other scales, inflaton energy drives expansion. Expansion magnifies fluctuations. Fluctuations seed structure. Structure shapes gravity's wells. Gravity reshapes structure. In microphysics, fields give mass. Mass curves space-time. Curved space-time shapes field behavior. In information, bits make states. States process bits. Erasure pays in heat. Horizons tally. Everywhere. Positive loops open possibility. Negative loops shape it into stability. Between them, complexity grows and does not run away. If there is a gentlest way to describe a self-creating universe, it is to say that it is self-responding. Nothing stands alone. Every pattern answers a prior pattern and invites the next. The cosmos is not a monologue, but a call and response choir, each voice returning as harmony to its neighbor. You do not have to solve the choir's score to rest in its music. The loops will keep looping without you. Gravity will keep coaxing. Radiation will keep cooling. Fields will keep settling. Life will keep weaving new intimacies with stone and cloud. Your breath will keep its modest feedback, inhale guiding exhale, exhale welcoming the next inhale, until the night grows soft and wide around you. Let the room dim a shade more. The serpent curls and does not bite. The river meets itself without paradox. The star enriches the cloud that will birth its grandchildren. Information threads the dark like faint starlight. Entropy rises, and along the way, islands of order appear, hold, transform, and pass their memory forward. You are one such island. Lay down the day. The universe will continue answering itself, quietly, faithfully, in circles that feel, from here, like care. Imagine holding a smooth stone in your palm and turning it slowly until any single edge disappears into a curve. Origins can feel like that, less a sharp point and more a rounded place where questions glide instead of catching. A universe that brings itself into being lives in that roundedness. Cause and effect. Stop lining up like dominoes and begin to fold into one another like a tide returning to the shore that sent it. The story is not a single spark and then a long afterglow. It is a self-lit lantern that keeps feeding its own flame, moment by moment, law by law. This shift in shape changes how beginnings feel. Instead of a clock started by an external hand, picture time as a loop of music that generates its own beat. The Big Bang is still there, hot, dense, immense, but it is no longer a door slammed open from the outside. It can be a crest in a larger rhythm, a place where space-time and fields intertwine so tightly that before and after stop being separate lanes. In that rhythm, the need for a first pusher grows gentle. The cosmos can be self-referential without being self-contradictory, the way a circle is complete without needing a first point. From here, consciousness no longer looks like an afterthought. If reality is woven from feedback and information, then noticing becomes part of the weave. In quantum mechanics, outcomes congeal when systems interact with their surroundings, when information is exchanged. Call it observation, if you like, not as a heroic human act, but as the natural settling of possibilities into facts. Minds are latecomers, yet they are made of the same fabric, and when they measure, they join the chorus of interactions that make the world specific. The universe does not wait for us to exist, but once we do, our looking belongs to its becoming, the way a listener finishes a piece of music by hearing it. Interconnectedness comes into focus as more than comfort language. If the world is a network of informational transactions, then every nudge echoes along threads we do not see. A butterfly shifts air with its wings. A star bleeds heavy elements into a cloud. A gesture of kindness changes the probabilities in a room. Chaos theory and cosmology meet in the idea that small differences can be amplified, guided, or damped by loops that cross scales. This doesn't make fate a machine or freedom an illusion. It makes responsibility a quieter, deeper thing. To act is to modulate a pattern already in motion. To rest is to let the pattern pass through you without needless resistance. Meaning, in this light, doesn't need to descend from a balcony. It can rise from below and spread sideways from the interplay of simple rules that produce intricate forms, from the way relations stabilize into habits and habits into laws. Teleology softens into emergence. Purposes appear as systems learn to preserve themselves, to exchange energy gracefully, to encode, remember, and anticipate. A self-creating universe is not directionless. It is self-directed, finding aims within its own dynamics, first to persist, then to complexify, then to reflect. If there is design, it is a verb, not a blueprint, ongoing rather than once for all. Older pictures of creation remain luminous in the background, a prime mover, a first cause, a voice saying light. These are strong archetypes because they satisfy the mind's taste for narrative anchoring. A self-creating cosmos does not mock them, it reinterprets them. The prime can be the consistency of the laws themselves, the voice, the boundary conditions that allow solutions to sing, the cause, a loop that closes without breaking logic. Contemporary vistas like the multiverse and holography extend the thought. Perhaps many self-starting worlds bloom under different rule sets, each a valid poem in the language of mathematics. Perhaps volumes are written on their boundaries, and what we take as deep interior truths are actually the surface's careful accounting. Either way, the transcendent becomes immanent, the extraordinary housed in the ordinary, the far hidden in the near. Ethics changes temperature under this sky. If we are not passengers on a pre-written script, but participants in a self-evolving process, then agency is not a borrowed spark. It is native to the weave. Stewardship is not only obedience to a higher command, it is skill in handling feedback. Burn a forest carelessly, and the loops that once cooled the region will warm it. Heal a river, and the loops will magnify the healing. Technology becomes a practice of resonance rather than conquest. Politics becomes the art of shaping incentives, so good behavior stabilizes itself. Morality is engineering for fragile systems made of living beings, tuned to reduce runaway positives and strengthen wise negatives, so flourishing cycles instead of flashing and collapsing. Even solitude feels different. In a self-creating frame, you are not an island watching a separate ocean. You are shoreline and tied together, organism and environment, exchanging letters every breath. The nervous system is a rehearsal space for the cosmos's larger habits: prediction, correction, pattern, completion. To meditate is to watch loops with kindness. To love is to let another's pattern modify yours until both are better stabilized. The sense of meaning that comes from belonging is not an illusion. It is the nervous system recognizing a high-quality fit between your inner dynamics and the world's outer ones. Doubt, too, finds a soft chair. Not all implications are comfortable. If cause and effect loop, can we still speak of ultimate reason? If minds help make the world specific, is truth only local? The answer can be humble and steady. Global consistency is the anchor. The loop must close without paradox. The local must fit within the whole. Truth becomes coherence across scales, and inquiry becomes the work of extending that coherence, experiment by experiment, conversation by by conversation, so that more of the pattern holds more strongly. Science remains our best discipline for testing fit. Philosophy remains our best discipline for asking what the fit means. Art remains our best discipline for feeling it. Inhale lightly, as if tasting the horizon. Exhale, and let certainty loosen its jaw. A universe that makes itself is not less wondrous for lacking an external spark. It is more intimate. The sacred, if the word helps, is not elsewhere. It is here, in rules that allow beginnings, in matter that learns to remember, in minds that can tell this story without needing to win an argument before sleep. The circle drawn in sand is washed and redrawn with each tide, yet the beach endures. So do you, carried by loops you barely feel. Heart teaching lungs, lungs teaching heart, thoughts easing thoughts. The night is generous. It allows many readings at once, gift and law, emergence and intention, one world or countless. What matters for resting is the sense that the whole is livable. The cosmos keeps its balance with care. Meaning can arise within it without permission from beyond. Responsibility follows naturally, not as burden, but as belonging. Let that be enough. Let the lantern burn quietly by its own light. Let the universe continue crafting itself, and let your breathing join the craft's steady, unforced, part of the same gentle work. And so, with the lantern dimming, we let the story rest inside its own soft glow. We've drifted from the quantum hush where fluctuations whisper possibilities, through stars that forge and return their light, along the balanced ledgers of energy and the patient laws that keep faith. We've traced mathematics as a quiet grammar of reality, watched symmetries hold and gently break, glanced toward many possible worlds, and listened to old creation songs walking beside new cosmology. We've sat with fine-tuning and first causes, with doubt and consolation, with science and devotion sharing the same window. We've lingered in self-creating loops, in feedback and information, in emergence that turns simple rules into living complexity, and in the soft responsibility that follows from belonging to such a weave. Inhale, like drawing starlight close. Exhale, and let it lengthen into dark. The room lowers its lights. The river of stars slides past the window. Your breath finds the night's steady cadence. Nothing is hurried. Nothing is forced. The questions keep their quiet orbit, and the answers sleep beside them. Let the last notes fade, not as an ending, but as a door left gently ajar so you can keep traveling where the sky continues and dream where the cosmos hums on, low and kind.